Thank you very much for coming today. We are on another installment of my nine installment series of the late Qing Dynasty. Just to recap, we've gone through the First Opium War, the Second Opium War, and then the Taiping Rebellion, the modernization period, and last time we talked about was the Sino-Japanese War, where China had been modernized for about 30 years, and then they fought a war with Japan and the fleet got completely annihilated by the Japanese, and also and China lost horrendously and to pay back at least 3 years of the annual revenue to Japan. And so today I'm going to talk about the 100-day reform of 1898, which is a direct result of the Sino-Japanese War. The Sino-Japanese War, basically, it's a lot of academics call it the day when the Chinese woke up. Because I think before that, a lot of different Chinese intellectuals were still in this mindset that China was still in the middle of the universe, and that Confucianism is the flower of the center of this universe. And basically, the Sino-Japanese War, because China lost to Japan has always been considered as the student of Chinese culture. And so the teacher is finally lost to the student, and that's why they wake up. And when we wake up, that's the direct aftermath, would be the 100-day, extremely radical 100-day reform. But before that, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. On a very cold winter evening in 1875, January 12th, in Beijing, very close to the Forbidden City, there's the Central Academy of Music. At the time, it was still people lived there. And then there was a young boy who was about 3 and a half. He was sleeping, and then suddenly he was woken up. He was woken up, and then his dad wasn't around, and his mom was bawling, was crying, and then there were a bunch of strangers just dragged him across Beijing. And so his cries were probably heard in the whole city. And he got dragged into the Forbidden City. He had to kneel down and worship his cousin, his 19-year-old cousin, who just died that afternoon. Afterwards, he's got put on the emperor's robe, and he was then the next emperor of the time in 1875. His name was Guangxu. Guangxu is the second to last emperor of China. And so today I'm going to talk about, because this 100-day reform and then the Wushu coup d'etat is very much a political movement, but it's also a family thing as well. I think a lot of people, when you try to understand Chinese history, sometimes it's quite confusing, like some of the actions of the leaders. And most of the time, because one would look at China as one entity and look at China as one thing where the leaders have a pure incentive for the betterment of the country. And usually, it doesn't work that way. It's substantially more complicated than that. In general, I'll draw the kind of like the circle of interests. And today, you can see all the circles being affected. At the core, you've got the personal interest of the leader. So in this case, it's Cixi, so the Empress Dowager. And the bigger area is the interest of the core group of the regime. And then you've got the interest of the regime. And finally, it's the interest of China herself. So insofar as the actions of the leader, he or she would act for his own, the maximum of her own benefit. And most of the time, it might be related or might not be related to the interest of the core. And then the interest of the core, after they find it out, then it affects the interest of the regime. In this case, the Qing Dynasty. And insofar, whatever might be good for the regime may or may not be good for China. And so that's why you see a lot of different times. How come, there are a lot of actions done by the Empress Dowager, the Qing Dynasty? It's seemingly counterproductive for the country's development, but they do it anyway because of these interests that are within the interests of China. So, and you can see this thing happening again and again and again. And so now we have to go back, because today we're really going to talk about the relationship between Guangxu and the Empress Dowager. I think we talked a little bit about it because the Guangxu became emperor in 1875 when he was 3 and a half. And before that, Today we have to talk about the family side, the core side of the politics of China at the time. And I have to draw again the family line of the Qing Dynasty emperors. You've got Dao Guang, who ruled from 1820 to 1850. So the first Opium War was during his time, and that's when Hong Kong was ceded to the Brits. He had a few sons. He had the first sons, Yi Wei. This is his first son. The second, third died. Fourth son, Yi Zhu. Fifth son, Yi Cong. Sixth son, Yi Xin. Seventh son, Yi Xuan. And just to give you a little background about Chinese culture, in general, because it's very important to know who's your uncle and who's your nephew, and then because most of the rich guys had about like 15 wives, and you cannot use age to tell who's the nephew and who's the uncle. In general, if it's that one generation, the Chinese family would have most Chinese people have two, like the last name and then the two names, two characters. So usually the same generation, the first character would have the same character. So in this generation, it's the Y generation, it's the Yi generation. Okay? And then also, because the imperial family, they need to distinguish within the imperial family who's closer to the emperor and who's away from the emperor. And so the second character of their names tend to have to one side of the article to be exactly the same. For example, they would have a radical this, which is, this radical means to speak. So all of the Chinese characters would have this in the second character, okay? So now we go one by one. So he died early. You remember I talked about it. The first opium in the second Opium War. He's supposed to be the eldest son of Dao Guang, but until at his 20s he was still studying, and he wasn't studying hard enough. And so one day his teacher told him, "Hey, Yi Wei, you're going to be emperor next very soon, so you better study hard." And Yi Wei said, "You know what? If I'm emperor, I'm going to kill you." And so the teacher told the emperor. The emperor was like, get the eunuch to beat him up. And he was like, no, don't do that. They're not going to hit hard enough. I'm going to do it myself. And he kicked him, and he died in 3 days. So it was pretty scary dad. And so I talked about it a little bit before. And then here is then the fourth son eventually became emperor, Xianfeng. He is the emperor that ruled throughout the Second Opium War, and then so when the Brits and the French invaded, he fled to Rehe and died. And when he died, he had his main wife Ci'an, and then one of his concubines Cixi, who bore him his only son. So this generation is Zai Chun. So he became Tongzhi Emperor that ruled from 1861 to 1874. So the earlier part of the modernization period. And you remember, Yi Xin is supposed to be the smart guy. So he was the Prince Gong. Prince Gong is the smart guy who led a coup d'etat with Ci'an and Cixi against the bunch of guys that Xianfeng left behind to help his young son. And they coup d'etat, and then they won. And so it became a three-people relationship of ruling together. Okay, but he died. He died when he was 19. Supposedly, a legend goes he died of syphilis because he was too bored in the Forbidden City. So he went out and had fun and had too much fun, and so he came back with syphilis and died. He died, and then so the problem is now, who is going to be emperor? Because he's like the first emperor in the Qing Dynasty, like over 200-something years, without a son. So what do? In the case of the Qing Dynasty, you always have to go. You can't find your the next heir at your generation. You have to go one down. So the next generation after Zai is Pu. So the last emperor, for example, is Pu Yi. Is. And Zai, the radical at the side is 3 dots of water. And Pu, if you're close, the next generation, this means person. And so it's okay, do we have anyone in the Pu family, in the Pu generation? Oh, there is. Actually, Yi Wei has a son called Zai Zhi, who has 2 sons, Pu Kan and Pu Lun. So one of them can be emperor after him, but then the 5th son said no, because Zai, remember, he was kicked to death, and so when he died, he had no son. So his younger brother was like, it's too sad that my older brother has nobody to be his descendants. So this Zai Zhi came from further away from the Aisinzhou imperial family, so they don't count. Okay, and this is very, very, very important. I mean, I'll probably spend too much time on this. It seems like a very, very trivial detail, but I think what's important is you have to understand, on a more macro basis of Chinese history, that each dynasty has its own political power DNA, as in where is the core power from. For example, the Song Dynasty from 960 to 1278 was a dynasty where the scholars ruled. As in the scholars, it was actually quite interesting. It's the scholars, there's actually no capital punishment against a scholar, like someone who understands Confucius text. And whatever he says, the emperor cannot do anything to him. So it's probably one of the most open societies in the 5,000 years of Chinese history. The Ming Dynasty had a very similar DNA where the scholars ruled. But because the emperors had bigger power and because the emperors were mostly too busy having fun in the Forbidden City, the eunuchs then had a lot of power. And so in the Qing Dynasty, it's a little bit different because Qing Dynasty, if you recall, there are a bunch of Manchurian clans that took over Manchuria and then invade the rest of China. And when that happened, the 2 first emperors, Nohachi and then Huang Taiji, used a lot of his own brothers and nephews to fight. And so the core families, probably a bit like the Tudors, right? Like it's like where the core family members had a lot of power. And the strong emperors of Kangxi, Yongzheng, Qianlong, they tried to get rid of that. But when Xianfeng died, and it was just a young son, this whole close-knitted uncle network of ruling then became important. And this is one of the vital reasons why the Boxer Rebellion happened. It's actually related to this, which is why I'm going to talk about this again. So when that happened, and why do we know that? Is because all the security done in Beijing, it's called Bujun Tongling Yamen, all the armed forces within Beijing are usually run by the close members of the Daoguang descendants. And as you know, right, whoever runs the core military within the capital, they have to deal with the say. So Yi Chong said, no, but it must be a blood descendant of Daoguang. So who do we have? We don't have any Pus at the time yet. So Pu Yi was born much later. Who do we have? We have Yi Xing has a son, Zai Cheng. It's 18. Yi Xuan, the 7th son, has a son, Zai Tian. So it's 3.5. So this is the person I was talking about in the beginning of the story. So which one? So and in general, we should have someone who's older. That's more appropriate to be emperor. But there are a lot of reasons why this guy cannot be emperor. One of the reasons is because when Tongzhi went out and got his syphilis, allegedly the person who brought him to get the syphilis was Zai Cheng. And he also had an affair with a woman who turned out to be a wife of the Aisinzhou of his own clan and one generation up. So he effectively had an affair with his own aunt. And also, the Empress Dowager wanted to continue to control politics. And if you have to deal with an 18-year-old, it's a lot more difficult than to control a 3.5-year-old. So he's out. So he eventually was selected, not only because he was young, but also because his mom is Qi's sister. So Zai Tian, who is now Guangxu Emperor Guangxu,